Yeah, we're talking to comedian Tim Heidecker here on the podcast broadcast. He is going to be performing at the Rialto Theater on July 31st, and we're live on the air right now as we go back and forth on this podcast broadcast. What was the pitch like for Cartoon Network when you guys, because obviously this is not like a normal thing, like, hey, we got a sitcom, we
Yeah.
want to go, or a cartoon about stoners. It's not an easy pitch. How did you win them over?
It's funny. It's kind of I'll try to do the short version. It was we had made this short called Tom Goes to the Mayor, which was this little, very rudimentary animated thing with stills and us talking. It's very dry. It was very us, but also just kind of weird and a little unsettling. It got passed around and eventually ended up in Adult Swim's headquarters. Some people there didn't like it, didn't get it. Some people did. A woman that did get it thought that it would be a good bumper, which is like the things between the shows, like little 1 minute interstitial things.
Yeah.
But the main guy there, Mike Lazo, who's sort of the genius of Adult Swim, the guy that kind of started it, he saw the future with it. He just said, "No, I think this could be a show," and we were stunned. We did not see that.
Right. Yeah.
But you take the opportunities the way they come, and it was primarily just animated. It fit in. I understood it. It fit into their aesthetic of very lo-fi, and very weird. But so they just, and we had at the time, Bob Odenkirk was our first person that we reached. We'd reached out to a lot of people, but he was the first to be like, "This is cool. I like you guys. What do what's your deal?" So we had him in our corner. We had sort of the style of the show, and they said, "Yeah, go write a script, go write a pilot." And at the time, I think the budgets were so low that they were sort of just throwing stuff at the wall and trying stuff and giving room for us to figure out, which was just, I mean, it's hard to have perspective in the moment. And now I look back on it and just be like, wow, they really took a huge risk on unknowns, and we took it very seriously, worked very hard, and it became our life.
Yeah, what's the biggest challenge though? Because you're going from essentially creating little bits and sketches and videos on your website and doing this all DIY, and then they greenlight you and say, okay, now we want you to write a full show and a bunch of those, right? How many initially? So what was? I mean, obviously after you and Eric, probably your heads explode and you're like, what the hell are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Then you buckle down and do it. How difficult was it to put it together like a 30-minute or 15-minute show?
It took a little bit, and we luckily had Bob, who had many sit downs with us, kind of explaining story, and he always said about us, and he's said this a bunch of times. It's like Tim and Eric we were good at taking notes or taking his feedback or his suggestions and ideas and making them our own. So we would not take everything. He knows everything about comedy, and he's very passionate about it. So we would take half of what he said, and then it would kind of go through our mixer. But you're bringing back I don't say painful, but definitely they're definitely like, wow, we're in the deep end here. I don't know what can happen to these two characters. And then you learn that you just write what you think is funny, try to make the other person laugh. And then the rest is kind of just problem solving. It's like, I think a lot of writing is half inspirational, like ideas that you get in the shower. And the other half is sort of like a crossword puzzle where you just have to figure out how to finish it, or just a maze where you're like, all right, how do we get to the end of this thing? And
right. Yeah.
It's funny, especially with comedy, where that show didn't really mean anything. Stories people weren't, we didn't get any awards for our storytelling. It was just
it wasn't a running narrative either, right?
Yeah. But it was an interesting challenge for sure, and just also to think about being 25 or something like that, and suddenly like being in charge and being in the producers of this, and hiring, figuring out how to hire people and work with other people, and what's the right way to tell somebody to do something, like all that stuff was like thrust in us in the first year of making stuff.